And we don't just publish locally. We started out, my idea was to publish locally, but then I started getting these submissions from people around the country. And today we've published a little over 60 individual authors, over 100 books, but 60 individual authors, and about a quarter of them are central to this area, say within a 50-mile radius of that.
Yeah. So, and you have your second gathering of poets coming up in April.
Yeah, we started doing this gathering of poets. This will be our third year in April, and we bring in 6 poets, award-winning poets who teach workshops throughout the day. And we sold out in 3 weeks this year. It was amazing. We opened it last year. We sold out, I think, 2 weeks before the event. We opened it to 53 poets because the spaces we have here that's a really good number.
And 53 is just a good number anyway.
The 53 is a hell of a number.
You want to tell about your 53 experience?
Yeah, well,
they want to know.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was a kid, I shared a room with my brother, and he came into the room and said that I just asked him one day what his favorite number was. He said 7. And I said, well, it can't be yours because that's mine. We can't have the same lucky number because then it's not lucky. And he wouldn't change his mind. And I thought, well, I think Mom likes 7 too. And so I need to find my own lucky number. So I sat down at my desk and I came up with this idea that, well, if it's a single digit, it's got to be somebody's lucky number. So I got to have a 2-digit number that eliminates the possibility for somebody else having it. And I just like the way 53 looks. So 53 became my lucky number. And then 2 years later, Disney came out with Herbie the Love Bug, and there was 53 on the side of Herbie. And it's been following me ever since, everywhere I go.
It shows up everywhere, and his kids run into 53s, and we'll call him in the middle of the day, and you'll never guess what I just saw.
Oh, yeah, my son 53. Called me from Reynolds High School and said, hey, we're in cooking class, and we just make cookies. You'll never guess how many cookies we had. I said 53, and he goes, wow, you're good. So I said, well, 53 is a prime number, which means it can only be divided by 1 itself. So that means only one person can eat all those cookies. So have at it.
So what else do you have here? Ray's got a new book out.
In October, this was really kind of nice the way it's worked. About 8 or 9 years ago, I was teaching a short story course at Salem College. And Ray Morrison, who owns Art Vista Animal Hospital with his wife Jenny, took this class, and he brought a story to class called Lenny and Earl Go Shooting Off Their Mouths, and it was one of those stories that made me laugh out loud 3 or 4 times. And I asked Ray, I said, where are you getting stories published? And he says, I'm not, I'm getting rejections all over the place. And I said, well, let's talk. So I just pointed out a couple little things that might be going on in his stories that might prevent him from being published. And then he started getting published everywhere. And a couple of years ago, he won first prize in our short fiction contest that was judged by Chris Offutt, who's one of my heroes. Chris is a wonderful short story writer from Kentucky, novelist, memoirist, but also recently he was a co-producer on Weeds, and he was an executive writer or editor on, what was that other show? True Blood, right, that one. So anyway, he picked Ray's story as the winning story out of 190 entries that we had. And so I called Ray and said, it's time. We got to do a collection of stories for you. So we published In a World of Small Truths by Ray Morrison. And it was our 100th title. It just worked out to be the 100th book we published. And it was last October on our 7th anniversary. So it was just perfect the way it worked out. Ray is going to be here next Friday.
That's right.
In a really neat event. That a good friend of his is Jeffrey Dean Foster, who's probably a legend here in Winston-Salem in the music circles anyway. So we're going to pair up Ray and Jeffrey to do a mixed set of music and stories. And Ray's going to back him up while Ray's reading stories. Jeff's going to play, and then Jeff's going to play some songs and stuff. So it ought to be a really fun evening.
Yeah, that's going to be very, very
good evening.
Interesting.
Yep.
Very good show.
And we also just wanted to mention, I've got a poster here. You all might have seen these around town in store windows. This is a project called Poetry in Plain Sight that we're sponsoring with Winston-Salem Writers. A young man by the name of Rodney Holman brought this idea to Winston-Salem Writers, and Carol Rowan, the president, contacted me and said, what do you think? And I thought it was a great idea. And basically what we do is we find 4 poems each month that we put on posters like this and put them in store windows all over town, so people can stop and read a poem. And this is one from February by Joseph Mills. I could probably end my set with this one, if you're okay with me reading
Absolutely,
this. This is Joseph Mills. This is interesting. I met Joseph Mills when we had our big launch party for the press. We had just mentioned that we wanted to publish poetry, and this was at Barn here at Borders Books when they were still here. And didn't put out a call on the internet or anything, but just told the people who were there, and we had about 200 people show up for our lunch party. It was really amazing. That we want to publish poetry, and within 2 weeks we had 120 submissions from 5 continents in both hemispheres. It was amazing. I read all the submissions blind, and the 2 we settled on, one was from Val Neiman, who lives in Greensboro, and the other one was from Joseph Mills, who teaches at the School of the Arts. It was pretty incredible. But we just published Joseph's 4th collection of poetry called Sending Christmas Cards to Huck and Hamlet. And Joe's another one. He's been on Garrison Keillor's Writer's Almanac 4 times and has brought a lot of great success to us.
You got to hear Joseph read his poetry in order to really, he's really
so
amazing.
Much fun. He's just a lot of fun. What poets do, and what I tell people with contemporary poetry is they're observant. They look at things and say, oh, look at that. Here's what I saw. Did you see that? Right? So here's a poem he wrote called Baking with My Daughter. I want to do it, she says, at each step of the recipe. And I try to let her, even if it means broken eggs on the counter, too much salt and too little flour. She splays the dough onto the cookie sheet using the wooden spoon as if it's a combination snow shovel and mallet. When she turns away, I'd try to perform a kind of cookie triage. Finding those blobs with a chance at survival and nudging them into the vague roundness. After they're finished, she holds aloft like a medal and tells her mother, I did these all by myself, right, Daddy? I nod, saying nothing, and for the first time, I wonder how many of my own victories were smoothed into shape behind my back.
Oh, man.
Kevin Watson, the Press 53. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.